brother. Let's do it.
All right. Yesterday, when we spoke prior, when we left off, you was explaining to me how you feel like that you had made some errors in judgment as far as trying to keep in tune with that real nigga code as far as staying loyal to your friends or whatever. Go ahead, you can take it from there, bro.
Yeah, and even more on that, I would love to go at the 49-year-old Kwame, would love to go and talk to 31-year-old Kwame about the size of the chair that I was sitting in. A lot of times, which is why I admire guys like Jay, I admire LeBron, guys who assumed a pretty powerful position at a young age and had to sustain it. R.I.C.O, those guys that, we don't know the personal issues and the rise and fall and ebb and flow of all those guys because it wasn't plastered. But the reason anyway, it wasn't plastered, which is a victory. But the immaturity is another thing that I made a real mistake in. You couldn't beat me at politics, budget, the economy, winning elections, building, developing, making Detroit hot again, going out and getting national events and international events, Super Bowls, All-Star games, Final Fours. But how I conducted myself in that chair, I was still Kwame from Linwood and the Boulevard. And I had a responsibility once I achieved a certain level of notoriety, if you will, to represent senior citizens and, the soccer mom and everybody else in the city too. So I would like to have that conversation again. Right. That everything we do, when you come out of such we don't have a lot of people in our neighborhoods that grew up running businesses that were corporate entities, that were, private sector titans. We don't have that. We don't even see it. The people that run businesses in our community are basically entrepreneurs, and they can dress how they want, look how they want, as long as they hustling on their grind. But when you get an executive position, there's no model for it except preachers, really. And I really wasn't that close to those guys, and so it was like a fly by the seat of my pants. And many of the old guys that were in the political sphere in Detroit, to me, we didn't feel each other. I didn't come out of where they came from. I didn't go to the best schools. I didn't come out of the right neighborhoods. So I didn't really feel those guys. So they didn't really have good advice for me. Most of them were scared. They didn't really have good advice. It was more about, putting on a blue suit and a red tie.
Was it
pretty much
a generational gap type of thing?
It was definitely a generational gap, but there's also a gap in the black community. And this is where we can feel it now. The 40-something-year-olds now are different than the 40-something-year-olds 15 to 20 years ago.
Definitely.
The 50-year-old guys now grew up on Run DMC and LL Cool J and Fat Boys and Houdini. The 50-year-olds then grew up on Motown. Smokey and the Miracles. There was a whole different mindset. I grew up listening to Public Enemy, had an Africa medallion on my chest. I was on some black stuff, KRS-One. And it's a whole different vibe in that generational gap where you get a guy that gets older, but he still has some consciousness from where he comes from. Where 50 years ago, the thing was to get out of your neighborhood. Don't be like them Negroes. Don't act like that. It was the brown paper bag test. If you were light-skinned enough, you could make it out of being a black guy. And I grew up proud and absolutely fantastic experience to be black. I love myself. I love my black self. I love African American women. I love African American mothers and fathers. So it was a whole different mindset, because once you achieve a level of success, it was come out of your community. And I know rappers experience it, singers, actors, and politicians experience it too. And that's why when they come on television, you really can't feel them. It's a different feel, which is why Obama took the whole country and world by storm, because he can speak the language of corporate America, but he also can relate to people and brothers and sisters in the hood. And that was the different thing that people heard, but it's rare. And that's what I had, bro. I had a lot of guys, man, it was, oh, hi, Kwame, what we're going to do is that. I'm like, man, why are you talking like that, man? Well, why you just so regular? What's up? Well, you need to join these clubs. And I'm not joining none of that. I just want to get the job done. I want to fix this city. I want to reintroduce it to the world. Can you help me do that? And a lot of people, we just rubbed each other wrong. I didn't play golf. We hooped at the YMCA.
Right.
So it was like a whole different orientation to the job. And so I had to learn, I had to humble myself and learn some of those things. And I actually found out I liked golf when I started playing. But it was still a gap there, not just of generations, but of psychological, I call it psychological slavery, the continuing effects. I didn't really see why we were still beholding to something that was gone and institutions that we were respecting that held our people down for years. And it was an opportunity for us to all get up together and let's move.
All right. I got to ask you this. Can you hoop?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How tall are you? You like 6'6", right?
I'm good on the block. I'm good from 3. I got a nice one. I'm almost 50 now, but I got a nice game. I was always athletic. I played basketball and football in high school. I was All-American in college in football. I got a scholarship and played football, but I always had a nice game. Big fella, come to the court. I'm gonna make sure you know me when I leave.
No doubt. I like that. I seen your. Did you get a chance to see your episode of American Greed?
I did.
Tell me what you thought about it. That's my favorite show, by the way. I think you was the first black person I ever seen on there.
Right.
But I love that show prior to this whole situation. But tell me, I love it. I love it.
A lot of my folks watch it. Always used to tell me about it, and I showed up on it. I never saw one episode of that show before I saw my show. I haven't seen one since. That's always mine. Man, listen, man, when I tell you that was the most ridiculous nonsense, I think they did a heck of a job, and I admire their treachery. But it was nothing like the real story. If I was to paint a movie-like picture of all of the things that I wanted to do, that would be what I would do. So it was well produced. It was just inaccurate, the showing of the planes, the this, the that, and the context of how everything was in. It was just not true. It was false. It was.
They said you was stunting, man.
I know, and it was the stereotypical, what I call the niggerization process.
Right.
So nobody from that got that Detroit hadn't built a hotel since 1989, and we built 7 hotels. We closed casino deals. We had the first universal labor agreements in the city in more than 10 years, and had labor peace for 6 years. Crime was reduced in Detroit when I was there, and it's back up, been up since I left, to 1960s numbers. Yeah. We were able to go out, this black dude, this big old black, niggerization kind of person, was able to go out and get the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, the Pro Bowlers Association, G8 Summit, all to Detroit. Right. It didn't say that we built more new houses than any administration in 50 years, that we fixed more streets. We did 36 new parks. We did 6 new rec centers, that we revitalized downtown and brought in Dan Gilbert, who was doing all kind of stuff there, Quicken Loans. We moved their headquarters from Cleveland to Detroit. I recruited him by going to his basketball games in Cleveland, showing up. He didn't even know I was there. And so, it's only thing that is showing is what I like to call like that whole, negative image of the hip hop guy. It's this constant thing to make the big black dude, the big dumb Negro that went around spending money and wearing gaiters and being niggerish.
Right.
And that's what I hate about those shows, because they're entertaining, but it continues to diminish the mindset that goes into a city with an $86 million deficit and puts people around the table to balance the budget in the first year, while simultaneously raising $23 million from General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, and the entire corporate community to do a riverfront development to bring more people to the city of Detroit that they've been talking about for 30 years. We did it in 5.
Right.
The casino deals was in the air for 12 years. We closed them in 2 years. And now they each, MGM, Mandalay Bay, and Greektown casinos, they each built as a matter of fact, they make $300-400 million a year, but they built $1 billion structures in the city of Detroit, a dying city, as when I came in. And so I don't like the intellect, the teamwork, the kind of negotiation skills that are left out of all of these discussions. You just a dude that was in there, you was stunned, you was getting on hoes, that kind of stuff is entertaining, and I know our people get a kick out of it. but I want people to be aware of what they're actually doing. If you can talk about diversifying an industry, Detroit, when I came in, had a shortage of 3,000 nurses. So the auto industry laying off, but we don't have enough nurses. So to go and hurry up and partner with your school system, the community college system, and create nursing programs to fill those positions, because most of those positions are being filled by Canadians coming from Windsor, Ontario, every single day, filling nursing positions, lucrative nursing positions in the city. When our young ladies could do that, our young men could do that. And so you transforming lives by creating things that people on the spot, to create programs to make LPNs and RNs and partner with the local college and community colleges to be able to do it. That's the kind of stuff that I would like for people to understand that we did in Detroit. And the Detroit now, that all the stuff they're celebrating from the, the new riverfront or the new Port Authority, the new campus marshes downtown, Kwame Kilpatrick built all that. LL, all of it. Right. So it's this kind of thing where you get this image of me that just ain't me. Now, was I a black man? Yeah. Was I trying to be sharp? Absolutely. Did I have an earring in my ear for a few years? Yeah, I had an earring in my ear since I was 18 years old. So yeah, that's true too.
You know that being fly, that shit aggravate people and shit.
It does.
I was looking at, because I live behind a camera. I was looking at, I had to Google some pictures of you and shit. All your pictures, man, you had on the finest suits. You were smiling and shit. You had a nice face. That shit aggravate niggas, man. Tall, young, ambitious. That shit had to aggravate everybody. That shit had to aggravate everybody around, my nigga.
And you know what? I had a conversation with this guy, Alphonso Jackson. He was the Secretary of HUD under Bush. And he called me to his office. I had this situation where when I walked in office the first day, the Bush administration was about to take $18 million from the city for this housing thing, but it wasn't necessarily them. Detroit had never just reacted to the money that they got. So I found out what Bush was going to be, what the president was going to be, and I went to an all-white, all-Republican fundraiser where he was flying in town way out in Michigan. And I was the only black person there. When I walked in there, it was like the music was like, but I can tell you, Bush was cool. I talked to him. He helped me save the $18 million, but then he set me up a meeting with Alphonso Jackson, who was this short African-American man from Texas. I went to meet him. He was straight up. I love him to this day. He looked at me, man. He said, listen, you're 6'4", you're 300 pounds, you dress nice, you're educated. He said, I need you to understand, all of that is a negative. What you talking? He said, it's a negative. And if you don't figure out how to tone it down, these people will come after you.
Yeah.
I never forgot that, and that's what you're talking about. And I didn't figure out.
Pretty
how to
sure you made a lot of your.
Back then, no, because I was a little rebellious too. I'm gonna be me, I had that in me. So, that you're right. It did piss a lot of people off, and unfortunately, I would not humble myself to God to be able to deal with the issues that I needed to deal with there, not to the people. I always thought it was humbling myself to these people, and I didn't really understand that it really wasn't about them. It was about the bigger picture.
How much time are you serving right now, brother?
How much time? 28 years. I was sentenced to 28 years. I have the first two-man R.I.C.O conviction in the history of the federal government, a two-person R.I.C.O. And in my case, where, typically you have to identify the RICO acts and you have to have a judgment on each one of those, they didn't do that. They just named a lot of stuff, and they found me guilty of RICO with no specific acts. I don't have one act that they specified that I'm guilty of.
That's a goddamn shame.
Without the RICO conviction, I couldn't have got more than 78 months for everything else they found me guilty of.
They got to give you some relief.
I wouldn't have 7 years. The RICO is what exploded the guidelines, and they were speculating the day I walked, the day before, actually that morning. I'm in the FDC in the Federal Detention Center watching the news, and the talking heads are saying I'm gonna get 10 years. He's gonna get 10 years, and I'm tripping on that. 10 years, what? And the prosecutor, they had breaking news. The prosecutor was doing a press conference. I went over to the prosecutor and said, we're gonna ask for 28 years. And everybody in the FDC went crazy. And I said, man, that's what they're going to give me. And they was like, no. I said, it's already worked out. I could tell. When I I got to court, the prosecutor stood up and did a speech and said, we want to recommend 28 years. The judge told my lawyer to sit down when he was about to stand up. 28 years sounds right to me. That's what she said.
Right.
And she had a prepared speech with 28 years all through it and sends me to 28 years in prison.
Yeah, in my experiences with the court system, we always get the worst outcome. So when you said 28 years was mentioned and you said they going to give me that, they most certainly was going to give you that, and they did give it to you. You got to get some relief, though. Is there any way that you can get out of the situation? I interview a whole lot of killers. They on the streets. It's a bunch of them. Killed double-figure people, some of them and shit.
Yeah.
And they on the streets. And they're on the streets. It don't make no sense for you to have got that much time. I mean, I spent a good part of my life in serving time and in corrections and shit like that. Like they did you like you killed somebody, and that just don't make any sense. Seemed like it was personal.
It was definitely personal. It was personal to the judge, the prosecutors too. If you believe everything the feds said, forgive me. If you believe everything the feds said, that they said I had an intricate scheme to get contracts to my co-defendant, and the city had to overpay $1.5 million for a contract. I don't have a single count of embezzlement. I don't have a single count of misuse of public funds. No count of convictions of that. No counts of stealing any money, which is but they sold it around the country, hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts. My convictions for my loss is for one contract for overpayment for $1.5 million. Manafort had an $18 million case that he, got found guilty of, and he got 90 months. And so when people look at it, $11 billion hedge fund guys get 10 years, 11 years. So you're right. It's just no way that you can put this into. It's just too much time. I'm done arguing guilt or innocence. It's too much time. 28 years in prison is absolutely ridiculous unless there's a string of bodies, some rapes. I mean, it has to be something terrible. And there's nothing I don't have any victims. The city didn't lose any money in my case. There's no embezzlement or taking the city's money. There's no misuse of funds. The bankruptcy that happened in Detroit 5 years after I left had nothing to do with me or my case. 3 mayors and 5 years later. And so it's all kind of merged into this same conversation because people want to identify he must have been horrible.
Can you tell me, hold on, sir, let me stop you for a second. Could you tell me what you were convicted of for you to receive 28 years? The charges?
Yes, I was convicted of the primary charge in my case is R.I.C.O conspiracy, using an intricate scheme to create economic fear in contractors and getting for them to give subcontracts to my co-defendant, Bobby Ferguson. He got 22 years. And then they had it was called extortion by color of official right. I was not found guilty of any extortion or direct extortion. I was found guilty of extortion of color of official right, which means they say my co-defendant went to people and he said, if you don't give me this contract, the mayor's going to take your money or take your contract. The problem with the whole thing is that all of the contractors that testified, that's what I'm guilty of. That's what I got found guilty of, the R.I.C.O, the extortion of a color official right. And then I have a private fund that's called the Kilpatrick Civic Fund that they gave 5 years, a 5-year charge that they said I used the private fund for private use. It should have been used for civil activities. We raised, just so you know, I can go each one. Let's go to that one first. I raised $1.7 million in a fund that I used to help the communities, Little League football teams, recreation, senior citizen events. The government alleges that I used $13,781 for my private use, and they gave me 60 months for that. The $13,781, there was an audit done before I was charged with it, and she came up with the same number. I paid that money back, right. One check. Paid it back to the fund. Then they went to the grand jury and indicted me for it anyway. So it was paid back to the fund. But okay, 60 months. Then the other the charges are these extortion by color of official rights relating to the 10 contracts that they're talking about in this case, and there's a R.I.C.O wrapped around those. And so in none of the contracts that I signed, that I do anything with, it was all done direct extortion by my co-defendant. And because I was mayor, that's the official right, I was found guilty of those as well. But if I got found guilty of all of those and the 60-month charges, I wouldn't have had more than 78 months in the federal government. At the most, it would have been 84 if they would have enhanced me for a leadership role. But with the R.I.C.O, it sent my guidelines up 20 years. And so that's my charges. My charges are not embezzlement or misuse of public funds or stealing money or things like that. And so that's the difference now.
You got a mafia charge.
Exactly. They gave me a mafia, and then we call that sentence manipulation. I know you know about it. You see it a lot in the feds. They get these young guys and charge them with 924Cs, and they give them 2 guns at 7 and 25 and give them 32 years and tell them if they don't plead to it, they're going to add another gun. And so you got guys in the feds right now with 99 years, 87 years, 82 years, 57 years. I had a cellie had 57 years, young guy, 25 years old. When I got here, I could recognize that it wasn't just me. You know, when you're in court, you be like, "Woe is me." But once I got to the prison system, I see that this is a practice, this sentence manipulation, selective prosecution. Let me tell you something that's real interesting. I had a cellie at the FDC, Knowledge. He's from Ohio. He robbed a bank. He did it. He brandished. They got him brandishing and everything. He admitted he did it, pled. He got 10 years. I went to a visit. I come back from the visit, and everybody laughing. Look in your cell, look in your cell. Knowledge was sent to prison. And it's a white guy, bald head, tattoos everywhere in my cell. And when I walked in, I said, "What's up, man?" He said, "Oh, no, they made a mistake. I'll be out of here in the morning, man. We just got to do one night in jail." Actually, he turned out to be all right, dude. We sitting there talking that night. I said, "What you do?" Same county as Knowledge in Ohio. Same brandishing, same robbed a bank. And because he was married and the judge said that he's suffered enough, gave him 37 months. Wow. It's the same mode, same method, same crime, same everything. And that's what I wanted to say. I actually wrote this down, his name and everything, and wrote Knowledge's name down because I wanted to share this with people. To just see the two people. He was 33 years old. He was married. He had a child. Knowledge was a dread-wearing black guy, 25 years old. But he was a cool dude, nice young guy, man, just did some wild, crazy stuff. And he deserved, he'd tell you, I deserve to go to prison. But to take 10 years away from my life, and you're not doing that to everybody, that's the issue that I have with this system. It's kind of like a selective thing. You get 10, you get 20, you get 50, you get 40. And most of the people that get all the time, unfortunately, they're African-American, poor African-American men and women now from urban America.
Right. So, of course, you're pro-prison reform, right?
Absolutely.
So what are you doing? What are you doing from where you at right now? Because I know, prior to you coming to jail for this case, you never served no time. You was never in any trouble, so you didn't know that they was doing this to us. I grew up in the system, so yeah, you weren't privy to the information that they were doing all of this to us. What are you doing now that has happened to you?
I was. It's two different animals, state systems and federal systems. The state systems are evidentiary-based. This is what everybody studies in law school, is what I got in law school. They're evidentiary-based systems. They get it wrong sometimes, too, for sure. But for the most part, if you have a lawyer who's going to fight the case based on an evidentiary basis, you got to have something to back up the evidence. There's a difference between direct evidence or direct testimony and circumstantial evidence or testimony. And in the federal system, none of that is true. Matter of fact, when I stood up to hear my jury instructions in the beginning and sat down to hear the jury instructions, the judge says, most people don't go to trial, 97% of the people in this system plea, but the judge says direct evidence and circumstantial evidence are weighed the same. She says that right in the preamble of his jury instructions. So that means if somebody comes to court and says it was him, That's the same as having blood splatter, DNA, hair, a fingerprint on the bullet, a picture. It's the same, which is why in the federal system it's so crazy, because all they do is find snitches. All they do is find somebody to say he did it. Now, this person gets a break because of sentence manipulation. Remember, it's selective. If you get Kwame, I told you, one of my guys that I had back in the past, he stole $700,000 from senior citizens. They get him. All he had to do was do a deal to come and testify against me, and he did no jail time, and he had to pay the money back.
Wow.
They gave him home confinement for 6 months because he did such a wonderful job in putting me in prison. That's the deal-making system that this has become. It has nothing to do with justice. It has nothing to do with criminal justice. It has nothing to do with fairness or punishment or rehabilitation or reform or correction or none of the stuff that people say. Now, I was familiar with state systems because, of course, family members, and then when I was in the legislature, I visited prisons. And even when I was mayor, I went to a prison every month. And the first part of this sentence, I did 18 months in the state prison. So they did a state part and a federal part. The state part was on the text message scandal that happened lying under oath about an affair. I got 18 months for that. Nobody ever got no jail time for that either, though. Yeah. But a civil matter. But anyway, I went to the state and they put me in a max. They put me in a maximum security prison with an 18-month sentence. And they put me 4 hours away from the city with not a single black employee. So I learned about the state system a little bit. Then I went over to the federal system. And so what I'm doing now is I write a lot. And I can send you some of that stuff, brother. And writing, trying to educate the people in the world that I was in, because a lot of people believe Congress people know about this. You know, the mayors be knowing about it, the governors know about it. You think they don't know about this? I said, I've been there. No, they don't know. Listen, man, I'm telling you, they don't know. They trying to figure out how to get reelected. They doing their job every day. Their kid got a basketball game. Their wife, you know, their wife mad at them too, just like yours mad at you. So they dealing with the issues of the day or the week. They're not thinking about how this system works. They're not thinking about their friend, the prosecutor over there, is somewhere trying to ruin somebody's life deliberately to be able to get a bonus.
Right.
Because the federal system says, you know, prosecutors are judged by the number of years they get out in sentencing. So they're just trying to make a deal to get a sentence because their office is judged based on how many years they give out in sentence. So Chicago is one of the best offices in the country, one of the best prosecutors. Well, why? Why do we find out? How do we know that? And they judge that because they gave out thousands of years in prison sentence in 2018 and 19. But it ain't affecting the streets because it's still 600-700 murders. So you're not doing nothing.
Right.
So that's the thing, you know. So right now, just trying to educate the folks that are going to these criminal justice meetings that Trump is having every month. I have a couple people that I talk to that attend those meetings. I take my hat off to Jared Kushner, man. He's doing an incredible job. He's serious about this issue. This issue, he's serious about it. He's bringing the right people to the table to really try to figure out how to change some of this stuff here. It's hard because you got to get it through Congress. But just as educating as many people, starting with my own family and then moving out and trying to get people to understand that this is a wicked, evil system, and it's not helping, it's not correcting, it's not rehabilitating, and it's producing people that come back even more angry to do even more worse things when they get back out of here.
When you got there, did they demand to see your paperwork like everybody else?
Yeah. Well, no, I gotta say no. You know, my case was so public. I was number one on my case. I had a 6-month trial, and you know, by the time I got to the FDC, you know, they watched my trial in real time at Milan in Michigan.
Right.
And when I got to Oklahoma, everybody, my cellie was a lifer, my first cellie, and I wrote his clemency. He actually out now. He got a clemency from Obama, and he's one of the 5 men. I got to say this, man. I give honor to God for this. One of the 5 men who I wrote their clemencies and they got out, and there's more men who I write, and that's the other thing I do, who I help with 2255s and different things like that, and got out of prison, man. My whole thing is to get people free. And so, but he told me, man, we knew everything about it. They told us you was on the way. Man, 2 weeks before you got here, they told us you was coming. Everybody's looking you up. So nobody really asked for my paperwork. You know, they knew it was all good, but I was ready to show it. I got it right here in the locker. You want to check it out? It's like a phone book. Go on through that joint.
They asked to see Ferguson's paperwork. I promise you. They watched your whole case unfold on television. That's why they didn't act. That's why they didn't ask you nothing. Plus, you the fly guy. They like, man. They watching you, man. They like, man. I'm telling you, everybody was proud of you when you come through. They like, man, that little brother. He was in position, and
Yeah.
you know, everything that they accused you of.
Yeah.
It was all Detroit shit. They was all everything that they was accusing you of was shit that a Detroit guy would do. Um, yeah, stunting and a bunch of women.
Yeah.
That's Detroit shit, man.
You know, it pains me. One thing you just said, people was cheering for me. You know, it took me a while to get over this. You know, you've been in here. There's a deep depression that sits over every man that's been through this system. You can cover it up, you can smoke it up, you can drink it up, you can work out every day. I don't care what you do. At some point, you're going to realize that you're just trying to not get to that abyss. I don't care how old you are, it's going to happen to you at some point. And here, one of the things that really drove me crazy is, you know, I love that town, man. That's the town that I was born in, raised in. I went to those public schools. Those my people. That's where my whole family is, you know, right there in the city. And I had this horrible nagging guilt of letting them people down, you know, my family. And that was something that I hated more than anything else. And then that insult to injury, like you said, they pitted me against my family. And so many people in my family, they're waking up now in the last couple of years. But during that time, so many people, they said, just get him. You know, they was believing everything. We, as a people in a community, we believe everything the media feeds us. And we got to get away from that. Our emotions get away from us. They tell us something, we believe it, but we got to understand that they're trying to get ratings, one, and secondly, a lot of things that they report are counter to our success and peace and love and unity. And so we got to look at it, you know, again. And so it hurt me to do that. And so, you know, all the people, if I get a chance that are listening, man, I want them to know that, man, I'm truly sorry for letting y'all down like that. And not ever get the chance to come back out of here. Boy, I'm telling you, it's going to be dominion and transformation because this system got to change. And I don't know if there's anybody else that's uniquely positioned to do it, to really speak truth to power from the president to Congress to state legislatures, governors, and mayors, but also can go in the hood and relate to brothers and sisters there about how we start to make sure that we're doing the right things to prepare ourselves not to be in this system and not to get our children and our loved ones caught up in it as well.
Right. Legally, you know, by way of due process or whatever, what steps are you taking to get out of the situation you're in? I know you're not laying down, and you got a background in, you know, law, so.
Yeah, my you know, I appealed. My judge gave pretty simple one-paragraph denials of everything. So I've appealed to the Sixth Circuit and just waiting now to hear from them. The former governor of Virginia, his name was Bob McDonnell. Bob McDonnell took $286,000 from a guy that he said it was his friend. He was found guilty. The prosecutors recommended 10 years. The judge said he suffered enough and gave him 27 months. And then gave him an appeal bond. He's an independently wealthy white man.
Right.
When he got the appeal bond, he lost his appeal. And then he got a Supreme Court bond. And the Supreme Court overturned his case. The McDonnell case is now the seminal case with substantive review for anybody in a public corruption case. 15 guys that have been locked up under public corruption, they already out of prison. Bill Jefferson from New Orleans was the last person to get out of prison. And so I filed my appeal based on the substantial change in public corruption based on that. And just waiting to hear from the appellate court like the other guys.
I wish you all the luck on that, my nigga. You really got That's just too much tick for them to have gave you for nobody that got hurt. Did you have to forfeit any money or property in
No, because at the end of the day, I got all of the everything overturned. They said it was 9.6 million that the contracts were, and at the end of the trial, they said it was 4.4. And I filed an appeal, and they came back and said it was 1.5 and one contract. And so at the end of the day, I got the restitution overturned. And so there's no forfeiture on my part. My co-defendant, unfortunately, I need to say this, my co-defendant, Bobby Ferguson, man, was an incredible business guy, man. His father started that company in 1971. His father died of cancer in 1996. He took the company over and took it from being like a $10 to $15 million company to a $50 million company before I was mayor. He did Comerica Park where the Tigers play. He did the underground utilities excavation, site clearing for Ford Field where the Lions play.
Right.
And water main. So he was an excellent businessman, but here's what he was also. He was fiercely and tenaciously committed to hiring African-American men. And so he had 150 African-American men on his staff that he had on those machines and backhoes and excavation equipment. And he wouldn't take a job from another person to say, we just want you to be a black front. That got him into a lot of trouble. I liked it. I loved the fact, and he was in our hood. We grew up around the same area, Joy Road, right there, Illinois. We grew up in the same hood. And so we connected right off back in the 90s. And that became my best friend. And so when I got to be mayor, it was contracts that were subject matter in the case that he got before I was mayor, and I still got found guilty of it. So I just wanted to say, man, they forfeited a lot. They went and took and seized his machines and seized his offices and seized his bank accounts and houses and different things. And his 90-year-old mother, because of the stress of them coming after her stuff, which he eventually was able to get her out of everything, but she passed away, stressed out over this nonsense and over this wickedness. And so that's something that also it hurts. And so I haven't talked to him in a long time, but if he hears this, I want that brother to know I love him, man, and I'll see him soon.
No doubt, man. That's very diplomatic of you to speak of him like that on my platform. I really appreciate that. Appreciate that a lot. I really don't have any further questions, man. You pretty much aired it out. In my personal opinion, I don't. Shit, he's a superstar to me, man. Real talk. And you wear them suits. I'm going down to the D. What you say? What block I got to go through to get them joints?
You got to go to, actually, it's in Southfield. Move the store to Southfield. Larry Alabisu. It's called Fashion International, right on the corner of 10 Mile and Greenfield. If you go in there and tell them Kwame sent you up there, man. I'm telling you, he gonna take care of you. He gonna cut it right on you. So you got good measuring tape in there. So the suit wearing you ain't wearing the suit. That's what it looks like. So just go in there and give him a holler. Good brother and good group of brothers in that store too. So go check him out.
Kwame, I appreciate your time, man. I really, really appreciate the opportunity to sit down and chop it up with you. Your city love you. They all in the comments, man. They really, really love you, and they wanted to hear from you. They wanted to hear your side of things. So I'm really blessed that the opportunity that me and you had a chance to encounter this way. But, yeah, again, I really, really appreciate it, my nigga. Seriously.
And thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate you. And, man, congratulations on the platform. You put something on the web, and I didn't know. I don't have any way of knowing that. And they immediately, I got hit so correlates. Man, you doing something in New York? You doing something with my man? I said, wow. So I can just tell you everywhere, brother.
Yeah, and they know who I am. I told you.
I look forward to seeing where God takes you. And I think you're about to, do some amazing things. And I just appreciate the opportunity to have a voice even coming out of this dungeon, man. Thank you.
Oh, no doubt, man. We got to stay in touch, too. I want to know what you're doing, man. If there's anything I can do to contribute to you gaining your liberation and freedom again, I'm totally committed to it, my nigga. My platform is yours, straight up. At any time you need me, you know what it is.